My name's Tim McDonald. I'm the library director for the city of Pasadena, and I'm very excited to welcome you to tonight's community meeting on the Central Library Retrofit. We've been holding a series of conversations about this very important project, a treasured part of our community, the Central Library, which is a focal point of our civic center downtown, has been closed pending an essential earthquake retrofit. Thank you. Yeah. Before I get too far into the program, I want to, I've been reminded we do have translation services available tonight. If someone near you would benefit from translation services in Chinese, Armenian, or Spanish, we have translators here today. Just raise your hand and a person with a yellow button will be happy to sit by you and translate tonight's program. Looks like we're in good shape, but if that need arises during the program, again, please just raise your hand and we'll have somebody assist with interpretation during the program. Thanks, Deborah. So again, back to the purpose tonight. It's about listening to all of you. This is your library. I have the best job in the city as the library director, but it's not my library, it's your library. For the past year, we've been holding these conversations to hear what you need in your library to serve your needs best. And those are all of the families that live across the city. So during these conversations, we'll show a presentation of the current version of the design, listen to your feedback, listens to your questions, and then come back again, incorporating what we've heard during these conversations. And I'm very excited for you to see what has happened since December's community meeting, where we've taken what we heard in December and made some really nice improvements that we think answer those concerns and questions that we heard in December, and then hear more from you. Our main presenter tonight is Deborah Gerard, the lead from Gruen Associates on the design of Central Library. And joining her will be project manager Devin Barnes, who will also be part of the presentation. After the presentation, we'll hear questions from you. And there are microphones available for that for anybody who would like to stand and share an idea or ask a question about the process. That's why we're here, to listen to your thoughts. That said, I think we're good to go, right? So over to you, Deborah. Thanks.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us. As Tim said, we're very excited about this project and to show you what we've done so far, talk to you about the things we've discovered, and then hear from you. And sincerely are interested in hearing things that we're getting right, things that you would like to see us continue to work on. And that's all part of the process that we're going through. So this little meeting agenda just gives you a glimpse into what we're going to talk about so that you can kind of understand where we are on the pacing. I wanted to start and talk about why the library is closed in the first place. And so prior to us being involved in this project, there was some work being done to put in a fire alarm system and improve the sprinkler system, expand the sprinkler system in the building. And in the course of doing that, there were some discoveries made regarding the state of the structure, that it was something called unreinforced masonry, or URM is the acronym. And the URM buildings do not fare so well in the seismic country that we live in with earthquakes. And so, and the city has an ordinance that says all URM buildings should be retrofitted prior to the time of the finding of the URM. So a bunch of further studies were done. Again, this all preceded us, but we're well aware of the steps taken. And the building official determined that the building should be closed to use, that it was posed a possible threat and should be vacated. So an order to vacate was issued. There were more studies done. There were reviews of the studies by other structural engineers. There were various community members, including AIA Pasadena Foothill Chapter, Pasadena Heritage, various input from current and former library directors, public works staff. And throughout all of that course, they came to understand a basic order of magnitude for what it would take to do this project. And at that point, Public Works said, stop, we got to do this differently. And they put together... Can you just move the mic a little bit? I would be happy to. Usually people do not have a hard time hearing me, but I will make sure you can hear me. All right, I got to skew a little. So the Public Works put together an RFP, which resulted in a selection process of which we were selected. In the meantime, they also did some independent material testing and had yet another structural engineer, Nabi Youssef Associates, do another evaluation to validate the findings. At the time that this was all being done, the city realized that this was a pretty monumental undertaking, and that this was the time that things should be done and really looked at in the right manner. So two committees were formed. First was a community, might have these backwards in their sequence, but community programming committee. So the library director said, I think we really need to look at what libraries should be like as we move forward into its next 100 years. It's going to turn 100 in a couple of years, and we should get it right so that for the next 100 years, this library has the right amenities and the right programs and can accommodate the right things so that it can live on. And what is that? And so a community programming committee was formed. And it was appointed by the interim city manager, Cynthia Kurtz, at that time. And that committee got to work trying to figure out what the answer to that and several other questions are. At the same time, the mayor appointed a technical oversight committee. And this is something that is not uncommon in Pasadena. Pasadena likes to reach out to its experts. And so this technical oversight committee was formed of practicing engineers, so practitioners, and academics from Caltech. We've got the world's best academics. They literally wrote the seismic code at Caltech. And so they got a group together headed by Dr. Jennings, who from Caltech, and organized this technical oversight committee. In addition to the engineers and scientists were representatives from Pasadena Heritage, AIA Pasadena Foothill, and together they got to work trying to understand what had been in these reports and give us some guidance on the work we're doing. And so we've been meeting with that group ever since. All right, so here's a basic timeline. The little orange bar there is where we got started. So you see there was a fair amount of work that was being done prior to us getting on board. And the purple is where we are today. So we're still fairly in the beginning of this and still listening to the community, still doing programming. And the programming that we're doing, just to differentiate it from the program committee, the program committee was really setting the vision. What are the big ideas? The programming we're doing now is meeting with community members and other stakeholders to try and make sure we know what's important to you. As Tim said, this is your building. What's important to you to be accommodated in this building? And then we're also trying to look at that future flexibility so that we're not just bound to what it makes sense today, but what's really going to help us accommodate needs in the future. So I said we did, or material testing was done. We didn't do this, but it was done prior to us getting there. They took off the finishes in one of the rooms so that they could expose this unreinforced masonry, which is brick, and really make sure that what we thought was there was there. They did testing in various places, not only in this room, but in other spaces to test the quality of the mortar and the brick itself, so that we had as much data as we could. And through the course of this, we were now involved and working with our structural engineer. We looked at a variety of structural approaches to retrofit the building. And those structural approaches, I won't go through all the details of them, but there was a variety of them. I'm happy to discuss any of the details with the rest of you. But at the same time as we were looking at these approaches, we were also looking at establishing the criteria with the help of the Technical Oversight Committee and certainly Public Works to figure out, what is the right criteria for a building like this to live up to. And it was certainly had aspects in the structural code, but also historically. Everything we did had to be done through a historic lens so that the building was able to be preserved in the state that it is now, the architectural state that it is now, and that we want it to be. And so the shear wall approach was selected by City Council. Part of our obligation was to go back to City Council with at least 3 approaches that would accomplish the goals. And they made a selection based on our recommendations to them that we should proceed with the shear wall approach. So that was done in last August. And after that, we started on schematic design. So what is the shear wall approach? So the building, I should start by explaining that, is made up of these parallel walls of brick. And when we call it a wall of brick, that's actually 3 bricks wide on the tall walls, 2 bricks wide on the shorter walls, with an air gap, and then 3 more bricks wide. So it's very thick walls. There are 36 inches overall in general. Some of them are closer to 24 inches wide. And but the thing that they have in common is this air gap. And I'm going to explain to you in a minute why that cavity is so important. So the shear wall approach, we take the finishes off the building. In the case of the plaster, we can't save it, so we just remove the plaster. So the plaster is that tan colored material above the wood, which is the darker color down below. The wood is actually built-in bookshelves, and this was an original to the building. Myron Hunt designed this building to have these built-in book stacks. And the built-in book stacks also have a slot at the top of them, and I'll show you that in more detail in a minute, where the air conditioning comes out. So that cavity was a way to convey air conditioning without seeing ductwork in the building. And the air came out that cavity, that air slot at the top of the wall, or the top of where humans can walk. These are very tall walls, 40-foot high walls. And so that air slot is at about 8 feet tall, so above your head. There's a return air slot down at the bottom. And that's the way that seamlessly integrated was the air conditioning for this building. So one of the things that was important about this approach, the shear wall approach that was selected, is that, so we're going to remove the finishes. In the case of the wood, we carefully remove it and salvage it and store it. We mark where every piece came from so we can put it back exactly where it was. We know very well how to do this. The plaster, you can't remove in that way, so we'll have to replace it. We remove the finishes, then we remove the brick. And when I say remove the brick, the inside wall of brick comes out. So we shore up the wall on either side so that while this is happening, the wall is stabilized. And then we replace that inside thickness of brick with a reinforced concrete shear wall. And that reinforced concrete shear wall is what's going to hold up the roof and the floors and do the structural work that's needed to resist an earthquake. And the thing that's key about it is it preserves that gap where the air conditioning duct is. So everything we're doing is outside of the gap so that we can maintain that air conditioning duct. And when we're all done with that, we're going to put the finishes back on. So we're going to take all the wood, put it right back in place. We're going to put new acoustic plaster. And it was acoustic plaster. It's fascinating to us. 100 years ago, I didn't know that they had acoustic plaster, but in fact they did. And we know this because we have a long 17-page letter from Myron Hunt telling us all the things that were important to his design. It was really tremendous. Over the years, that plaster has been painted. It's not acting acoustically anymore. And with acoustic plaster, you can't do that because you clog up the hole. So when we replace it, we'll actually make it perform like it originally did. All right. So one of the things that's really important here is that it's not just about a seismic upgrade. A seismic is what's the catalyst for this. But while we're at this, we want to take care of all the other things that are appropriate and important for this community and this building. So the goal can't only be seismic. If it was only seismic, we'd have one type of solution. But this is a building that's historic. We must do this in the lens of historic preservation. This was actually the first building built in the Bennett Plan that started the Civic Center for Pasadena. So this is the most important civic building from that standpoint, and ultimately, historic preservation is critical. But the building, built 100 years ago, they didn't know what accessibility was in the way that we do now. So there's stairs all over the place. And people who have any sort of mobility challenges have a hard time getting into this building. So it is important, legally, an obligation that we upgrade this building to make it more accessible so that people of all mobilities and abilities can equally use this building. In order for this building to be a public benefit, the public has to be able to use it. So we need to get this building back open so that it can be used again as a library. And, through all of the work that we've been doing, we found how important that is to the community. It's important that we mitigate risk. So risks are for schedule delays, for cost overruns, for other things that could jeopardize the ability of this building to be completed and operational. Function, I talked a little bit about this before with the programming. We need to look not just at what it should do today, but what it should do broader, and what are those functions, and how do we keep this historic atmosphere and character of the building, but yet provide it with better amenities that are more consistent with what we need in the 21st century. And then, fascinating again, it has a 100-year-old air conditioning unit in this building. 100 years old. It's been running for that long. So great testament to how well built that was, and great testament to the maintenance that has been kept it going for all these years. But it's time to change it. And this is a really good moment to change it. Energy efficiency reasons, quality of what it can deliver, it's appropriate to upgrade those systems. So we've been doing a lot of community outreach, just like we are today, and this is a little laundry list of the things we've been doing. And we're going to continue doing these, meeting with seniors, teens, families, general community groups. So if anyone has a group that you want us to come and talk to, let us know. We will be happy to make a trek out to see you. And so the feedback that we've heard through the course of this, number one, when is the building going to be opened? Get it opened again. So that's really important to the community. But then there's the more pragmatic things like, please fix the toilets, which of course we plan on doing. Please maintain its character. Don't take all the books out. So people are concerned that it's going to be too much of a community center, that we're going to forget about the books. But I should also reiterate, it's not just books, it's hotspots, it's Chromebooks, it's all sorts of things that you can check out of today's library. And, but special events are also important. So that's something that we'll talk about here as well. There's a survey that's still ongoing, and anyone who has not participated in it, there's a QR code here, and we've got little business cards with QR codes on it around, and we encourage everyone to participate in the survey. And so at the point in time where we are now, we have a little snapshot of the survey, and this is just a sampling of the questions that were asked, but, should we do this project, and does the city need extra funds to do this project so that it can be reopened to the public? And people generally were saying yes, that is important. All the questions weren't of that nature. Many of them were about, what should be in this building? Should the outdated technology be improved? Yes. Should there be community gathering spaces? Resoundingly yes. Should we have places where video conference calls should be done? Not so much. So we've got a smattering of those things, and that's important. We found out that people don't want music studios in the building. It's important for us to know that. Some people had said, yes, you should do this. When broader questions are asked, not so much. So that's the type of feedback that we really need to make sure that this building is meeting the community's needs. Smattering, a list of the spaces. Many of these came out of the program committees, the visioning committees' recommendations to us. But then the rest of them came out of things that we heard from the community, either at community meetings or at pop-up events or various other places that we've shown up. And the check marks are because we're trying to make sure we're getting these in the building properly, and we've generally accomplished the things that have been identified as important. But no music studio in there. It was in there, we took it out. And the wine tasting. I'm all in favor of that. Very well used library. These are pre-pandemic numbers because the library was closed in the pandemic and then opened for a minute, and then it closed because of the structural issues. And so these are pre-pandemic numbers, but over 500 events annually in the auditorium. That's crazy. 365 days and 500 events. That's a very well-used auditorium. And you'll see later in our talk the improvements that we're proposing to make that auditorium work better for the things that it's holding. And these are just some of the special events. Certainly books and reading and studying and research are also amongst these very important attributes. So historic character, I've mentioned that a couple of times. So we have a historic consultant, Historic Resources Group, who did a very thorough study of this building in terms of what its characters are, what is character defining, and that's a term used in the preservation community, what's primary contributing, what's secondary contributing, and what's non-contributing. And so the massing and materials, the outside of the building is the most important thing. And I should probably make sure you guys can hear me back there now? Okay, all right, great. So the massing and materials are the top of the list. So making sure that it looks on the outside exactly the way it does now. And it looks very, very much like it did when Myron Hunt left it. It's been altered very little. There are certain alterations that have been done over the years, but the character of it has remained intact. On the interior, the organization of spaces and the finishes are the highest character-defining components. And so that's why peeling off that wood and carefully putting it back is really important. That's part of its primary character defining feature. The thing that's not on this list and that's non-contributing, the brick. So the brick not being visible anywhere is considered a non-contributing factor to this building. And so the work that we're doing to peel some of it off and put concrete shear wall in its place is within the realm of what we can do without affecting the historic nature of it. Okay, so this is that ductwork I was talking about. Very, very important to this building. And I'm completely impressed by how well this was done. So we've peeled off some of that wood carefully and documented it and crated it up so that it can be carefully put back. But we wanted to see, whether what we expected to be there was in fact there. And so you see these openings up at the top. That's where the duct is coming up, and we can see it in the basement going through a hole in the floor and coming up and having to that grill up at the top. And then down where that dark area is in the brick inside those little cavities is where the return air is going back into the basement. So it is built the way it was supposed to be. So one of the key things about this retrofit and the approach that we're taking is that we can't replace those ducts while that brick is there. There's no way to do that. We can't slide it out and slide something else back in. And those are 100-year-old ducts. They've got 100 years of dust and gunk in them. And so it's a good opportunity for us to be able to replace those. So when we peel off this front layer of brick, we'll replace the ductwork and then put the shear wall in. And I do want to just draw your attention to a couple other things. So you see that big gray horizontal bar? That's a reinforced concrete beam that's going the lengths of the room. That's also an important feature, and we can talk about why at later points here. All right, so let Devin do a little talking.
All right, thanks, Deborah. All right, I'm going to walk you guys through the plans and give you a little wayfinding, hopefully, here. what we saw when we first got on this project was with that civic master plan that Deborah had mentioned. And that used to be a strong connection with the south entrance. And so what we noticed was that with the addition of the parking lot, the north entrance became the main entrance, and it used to be the loading dock. So what we wanted to do is to give back more of that south entry to the north entry, still while maintaining both. So this is the existing ground floor level that you're probably familiar with that large book stacks kind of cube in the center. That was put in the 1980s. The stack levels, the actual volume of space was already there from Myron Hunt. What we found from the historic drawings, which is kind of like looking at treasure maps, was that Myron Hunt had intentions of putting in stack levels into that space. So what they did in the 80s had been in that intentions, and so what we're also proposing is to keep with those intentions, but at the same time, notice the importance of the north entry to the library. So with this, we have highlighted the colored areas where we're proposing some kind of change. So in that, what we're calling the circulation hall, that used to be the stacks, we're taking that area and opening it up to the Great Hall to give connection to the south entry. And we're taking that circulation desk that had been the main point of entrance for the south, but nobody could find it from the north. We're taking that and moving it in the circulation hall in along parallel with the access of the north and south.
And I'm going to suggest you just toggle for 1 second here, just because I think it's
Back and
useful.
forth.
So there's a big U-shaped wall that's right here in that area. So hopefully you can see my green cursor. Yeah. And that U-shaped wall keeps you from being able to see or walk all the way through the building currently. So as Devin's talking about coming in the remade loading dock that's become something called the north entry, you wander through an area that's a little bit of a maze. So you have to wander yourself around to get into the Great Hall. And so one of the things we're proposing to do is to remove that U-shaped shear wall so that it's not a visual impediment anymore. So this is now opened up, but you can also walk and see all the way through. And then I'll just point out one more thing, which is this opening exists. You just can't tell because that wall is in the way. But that opening is not, we're not creating a new opening. That opening is there. Sorry.
That's okay.
I can't help myself, sorry.
So in some of these other areas, we're adding, there are two, the northeast, I'm going to use the little pointer now, northeast wing and the southeast wing were actually 1960s additions. We're taking some of the feedback that we've gotten about more meeting rooms and adding a lot more meeting rooms into the library for the ability to have private tutoring, meetings for with lawyers, a lot of different things that have come up. What we've also done is added a stronger bank of restrooms. We've reimagined some of the back of house space for the library and talked to them a lot about how they function and how they need to be organized and be close to the circulation hall and on the ground level. And then also the auditorium we'll get into on some upgrades there as well. Going downstairs now to the lower level. This area had really only been utilized for a computer center. So what we're trying to do with this area, and also the book stacks that were there, we're trying to, I'll show you this picture. This is showing all the different levels down there. There's not an easy way of getting around. I would not suggest going down there by yourself. There's many levels. There's places that you can't get to from one side to the other. We're proposing, because we need to do the structural upgrades to the foundation and the lower level, we're proposing just to take and level out that floor to give this a much more usable space for the library and for some more community spaces down there. So what you're seeing here, the blue areas are, and the circulation hall are the public spaces. And then the rest of this is utilized for the library staff. So the circulation hall you would get to from that main circulation space that I was showing you with stairs down, very open stairs, and we'll show you some pictures. And an elevator. We are proposing 2 new elevators. We're taking out the existing elevator in the stacks that was not code compliant and not Gurney compliant. And we're adding in 2 new elevators to help with access to the different levels of the stacks. And then also to the basement and then lower level. And then also this other elevator over here actually helps really well with getting access to the auditorium and the backstage, and then also for library staff. Getting up now to the existing second level, it's mainly used with staff in some office areas up here, and then also what used to be a janitor's quarters off of the north side entrance here, and then the book stacks. Our proposal here is to take that stack area, and this is the top upmost mezzanine level that we're going to be proposing, and that would also have access to that janitor's gallery, or what we're calling now a gallery space that could be used for public art, art shows, or artist in residency type thing. Then we've recollected some of the administration offices over on this wing, and then we have access also to a boardroom area, or it's kind of just a really pretty boardroom or meeting room that could be reutilized, and I'll show you some pictures of that shortly. So showing you the Great Hall again in the 1920s, and then this one is, in the era before the library had been closed down. We're not proposing a lot of change here. So this is the proposal with that circulation desk removed and the entrance into the circulation hall that gives you direct access to that north entry. This kind of zooms into the circulation hall now and takes you to where the circulation desk had been in the Great Hall. And we're taking the same circulation desk and repositioning it in the circulation hall. And this will provide great visibility by the library staff for people coming in from the south and the north entry. And then also have a visible entrance, visibility, seeing, people going down to the lower level where the innovation lab, multi-purpose flex space, and the teen center is.
Could you orient people where the parking lot is?
Yes. So this area up here is north, directly is north. So that's the parking lot area, just to make sure that, and then this is the Great Hall down here, the lower level of the screen for. This is an axon of that area again. Once again, here's the mouse, showing that existing opening, but creating an actual pass-through space into the circulation hall from the Great Hall. The circulation desk that we're reusing. And then this is showing the 2 mezzanine levels that we're proposing. And this kind of where we cut it off here are the doors to the gallery space. And this is showing also a peek down into the lower level of the stacks area as well. So it's we're taking advantage of a lot of the natural skylight, or the existing skylights that are above on both of these sides. And we're opening up and making sure that there's light getting more infiltrated through here. What we wanted to show you with this is a rendering that we showed in December at the last community meeting that we had when we were developing the space and we were working with the finishes. And this was a lighter wood, and it didn't show well. So we have updated it to keep in with the stained darker oak wood that the library has, and to have more character in line with Myron's style.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate, we got feedback at that meeting, and we took it to heart. And, that's what we see the value of the feedback we get from you is we want to make this the best building it can be and the building it should be. And so we need that feedback. So we got feedback saying like, I like what you're doing, but that wood color's got to go. And the railings were not really meant to be exactly a design. They were kind of a placeholder, and we learned, don't do that. It's not a good idea to put a placeholder out at a community meeting. So we listened, and we are still developing. So this is still a work in progress, and we still are looking for feedback. But we're trying to make it more of that historic character with the darker materials, the wood and metal combination. And for those of you who are familiar with Myron Hunt's Huntington Library, you'll see that we're trying to borrow some of the nuance from what he did in that library, because we don't know what he would have done here because he didn't design it. All that we have from him are indications of a future stack area with 4 levels and 2 stairs. So we are holding to 4 levels and 2 stairs, but different from what, is it a sound thing? Oh, okay, all right. So different from, I'm very, very now worried. I'm usually loud, the loudest person in the room. So different than the 4 levels of stacks that are there today, which have these low ceilings because they cover the entire space. We're ringing the stacks around the room so that you have these mezzanines. So the middle is open so that you can see across and down, and that you get a sense of the volume, and those skylights that are up above can provide light through all the levels. And so it's a really integrated space. So it sounds like, 4 levels, but it's really the character of how we're trying to bring these 4 levels in that is important. Oh, yeah. So the floor to floor is about 7 feet clear to the underside, so it's rather short. And so that's when you put in something that's across the entire thing, is very oppressive. When it's just a 6 foot wide low thing, and then you have the open space next to you, that 7 foot height doesn't feel so oppressive because you're borrowing the volume of what's next to you.
And the cork flooring is existing in the Great Hall. We're planning to maintain that. And then similar to here, which has cork flooring, we're planning to put in new cork flooring into the circulation hall to make it flow more as one kind of circulation space. So here are a few other views. And once, as Deborah said, again, we are still in design. I mean, these are renderings that we do snapshots of, but we are still working out details, proportions, sizes throughout this.
Yeah, I was just going to say, so this is looking from the circulation desk towards the east side. And you see the volume down into the lower level and those staircases going up. So to the left-hand side is the north entry. To the right-hand side is the Great Hall. I'll be your Thomas guide here.
And then now we're up on one of the mezzanine levels, looking down towards the lowest level of this hall, where we have some extra stacks for books worked in, and you're looking towards the circulation desk that we've talked about. So to the right is... you're right.
You got it.
Right is the north entry, and to the left is the south entry in the Great Hall. Once again, these are some rendering. We are doing this in a 3D model drawing, so we study everything in 3 dimensions. So these are some of the snapshots that we can do from our model, and this is up on the top mezzanine, kind of looking down one of the pathways. And what we've heard a lot of the feedback is that we need to incorporate some seating spaces, some kind of pause spaces, so people don't have to walk too far, decide that they don't want the stack of books, put them down on the floor. So we're going to work in some of that into this, specifically from feedback that we've continued to get. This is that boardroom, or we call it a boardroom, but it is a meeting room for the public that can be rented out. But what we found from the historic drawings was Myron Hunt had on this west end this beautiful space with the arched ceiling and the windows existing, currently in the 80s, it was added in with a third level. We can't utilize that. We can't get in an elevator without taking out a lot of space and then also interrupting the Great Hall below. So we're proposing to take that out, which we need to anyways for structural purposes and reinforcement of the walls, and then recreate this back to what it was in Myron Hunt's time, and then use this as a meeting room for the public. This is the largest meeting room. Other meeting rooms that we have in the southeast wing are meant to have a multiple levels of different size groups that can meet and still have a sense of visibility for the library staff. We're constantly weighing out what the public wants and how the library can work with that. So we're always marrying up those two ideas. Other areas or flexible spaces, we have the Innovation Lab, which had been on the ground level before. We're reintroducing it down in the lower level. We also have a flex space or multi-purpose studio space that can be used for a multitude of functions. Same within the Great Hall. From some of the pictures earlier, I'm sure most of you have been to many of the functions at the library where maybe it was the One City, One Story event, and the Great Hall is utilized and the courtyard can be utilized for events. Accessibility is a big key thing for us, and we've been studying it pretty extensively on how people get into the south entrance. And we've been studying this not only from the accessibility code standpoint, but also from a historic, not disturbing too much of that entrance and not making it feel overpowering. We're doing this with sloped walkways, which are much more gradual than a ramp and doesn't need all the handrails and guardrails. And then we're also introducing one in the courtyard. And then I mentioned the elevators earlier. We're also doing one in a chairlift for the stage in the auditorium. So here's diving into a little bit of the auditorium. The existing auditorium we found just did not have a lot of the standard functions, backstage functions for a stage and support accessory rooms. What we're doing, we're providing a piano storage room for the Tuesday Music Hall, two grand pianos that we have there that the library has. And then we're adding in green rooms and dressing rooms. This was the elevator I talked about earlier, that we have easy backstage access for somebody in a wheelchair, and then also access to a toilet, and then the chairlift to the stage. The seating count is being rearranged, but the count is staying the same with 4 additional accessible wheelchair spaces.
And a better AV room, so a proper AV room, and a better pantry. So we are hearing loud and clear that those are important.
Also on the north entry, we're updating the accessible ramp into the north entrance. There had been a ramp and a chairlift that's not per current code now. And what we want to do with this is also have the same place where somebody goes up the steps is also the same place where somebody with a wheelchair might need to use the ramp. So they start and stop and at the same spot. That's more equal access than you go over that way. I'll see you inside somewhere. This is once again at the north entrance coming from the parking. This is the south entrance. In front of you are some of the sloped walkways, so we do not have guardrails and handrails until up at the top, highest level, not really for the slope, but more for a drop at that point. This is an overall view. Once again, not changing much on the exterior, but making it more accessible. And then updating the night lighting. You notice the City Hall has beautiful nighttime lighting, and then this would also be putting that in character and creating that nice access symmetry in the evening for events. And then this is in the courtyard, some lighting studies that our lighting designer is doing. Do you want to touch on landscape?
Okay, we're in the last part, and then we get to the discussion. So the last part here is talking about how we're landscaping. So Devin showed you some images of the front. It's cleaned up from what it is, but we're maintaining that. Myron Hunt wanted there to be hedges concealing walls in front of the building. And so there are walls there now that you don't see because there's a hedge there. So we're maintaining that. We're cleaning it up. There is a fair amount of turf, and we're trying to do a little better on water use and usage and maintenance by replacing that with better, more appropriate planting, but still maintaining its character. But so these are all the principles that are really encompassing all of the landscaping, whether it's in the courtyard, in the front of the building, or in a new area that we're developing. It wants to have a historic character, it wants to have a civic character, but these other principles of being pollinator friendly and resilient, these are appropriate to landscape today and can be done in a manner that's compatible with the historic nature of the building. So just for an overview of these areas. So we have the north entry, what we're calling Library Park, and then the courtyard and the south entry. But before we do that, everyone cares about parking, so I want to touch on the parking. This is the parking as it is today. And for anyone who's tried to park in this lot, you've undoubtedly had head-on, hopefully not collisions, but experiences with other vehicles going the opposite direction of you because the drive aisles are just not wide enough to pass. And so we found two things. One is the spaces weren't deep enough and the drive aisles weren't wide enough. Those two things combined to be really not appropriate. So we are rearranging it. The number of spaces does not change. It doesn't grow. It doesn't shrink, but it gets better. So we're making the spaces the proper size, we're making the drive aisles the proper width, and the way we're accomplishing this is we're having one-way traffic so that you're not trying to have drive aisles pass each other, cars pass each other, that everyone's going in general in a single direction. On the perimeter, there's two directionality, but for the bulk of the parking, it's one-way traffic. And we think this will provide much better intuitive wayfinding. The diagonal parking spaces are easier to get in and out of for most people. And so we very strongly believe that this is going to really ease up on some of the problems with using the lot. And when you have diagonal parking and you have proper drive aisles and people can get in and out of spaces, they don't take up two spaces. They tend to use just the one space they need. And so while we may not be able to increase the number of stalls, they'll be properly utilized. And then we have reconfigured and relocated the accessible parking so that it's proximate to both entries. So over here, this is proximate to the north entry, so you can easily get to that ramp that Devin showed you. This, even though it's a long way from the south entry, it serves the south entry. And it's really important that we not forget that people can go in the north entry, but they can also go in the south entry. And we want to make sure that we're accommodating both desires. And there's also an access into the auditorium off the side. And this parking here will be the closest accessible parking to the ramp that leads to the auditorium. So I mentioned that we have a new little library park, and we've got existing olive trees. Those are not going anywhere. We are maintaining and protecting those. But around them, we're taking advantage of the space that's there. And it's actually a relatively sizable space. And we're trying to reconfigure a park so that it's got a park with a purpose. And it will have some areas. It's directly adjacent to the children's area. So we envision there being outdoor reading opportunities for the children's room. Of course, controlled by an adult to take the children outside, but that proximity is really beneficial. And we can probably go into more detail, but I'm conscious of time, so I'll move on. And anyone who's got questions about this can certainly ask. So we get to the next steps. So here we are. We've completed schematic design. We went back to City Council and showed them what we had done. They were pretty pleased, I think is fair to say. And now we're in what we call design development. And so we're midway through that. We're also trying to make sure that all the costs that we have budgeted, that we're maintaining our design within that budget. And so we're in the process of preparing cost estimates to validate that the design is maintained within the budget. Following the completion of design development, we'll roll into 100% plans, otherwise known as construction documents, plan check, bid, etc. Hopefully, we will be in construction towards the third quarter of 2025 and completion about 3 years later. So with that, thank you for listening. And yes?
So I saw on the image that, I saw on the image that there were stacks along the perimeter on the third floor mezzanine.
Yeah.
So that was visible. Could you point out, I'm very conscious of our modern 21st century emphasis on all the other wonderful things that you guys are creating, technology, meeting space, presentations. But I have concern that stacks and actual books are, but of course we'll keep them a little bit sort of, So could you show on the levels where stacks will be?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I appreciate that. So I assume everyone heard the question. She's interested in knowing where are the stacks really and where are the books. So it gives me a good opportunity to tell you about our process as well. So first, let me start by just pointing out in this image, ringing each of these levels. So there's the main floor, 2 mezzanines above, and then the level down below, which is accessible through this opening and the stairs that go down and the elevator that goes down. So you can obviously see the top of the stacks in the lower level. Ringing that space in the lower level are also stacks. And then on the main floor, ringing the main floor are stacks, and ringing each of the mezzanines are stacks. So all the way around. It's a fair number of stacks and a fair distance. One of the reasons that Devin pointed out that we realize we need to put some respite areas where people can sit and read a book or browse at what they've pulled off the shelf and not just have it, all books. But so this is the main stack area, but we have stacks in every hall in this building. And so right now they're built in all the way around all the halls, and we are going to maintain that. So part of this approach where we take them out and put them back in is maintaining all of those stacks. In some of the rooms, there are also freestanding stacks. And then Devin mentioned, and we talked about this in greater detail in our prior presentations. We're just trying to move on to new information, so we didn't show quite the same thing this time. But in the 60s, 2 big wings were built. And so those are not historic. And so in those 2 wings, we're taking advantage of their non-historic nature and putting even more stacks freestanding in those so that we maintain the right amount of stacks in the building for all the volumes and all the elements that we need to. And we've gone through a very detailed process with Tim's staff to understand what those volumes are, how big they are, how much space they take up. But that's just a numbers game if you look at it from that standpoint. We have to go to a whole nother level of mental exercise and figure out how many of each type there is, because you don't want, some fiction with the nonfiction. You want it to be, very cohesive. And so it's really trying to figure out how big each of the sections are and where they appropriately can reside or should reside. And so that's been quite a fun puzzle. And I think we got to the right place for that. Other questions? Yeah. And there's a microphone there if you can use it.
Well, first of all, I haven't attended a meeting in a couple months, so this is fabulous,
Oh,
just
great.
the amount of progress.
Oh,
and
thank
it's
you.
very clear, so thank you. Two things. One, is the fountain going to work?
Yes, it's working now.
Aha.
So yes, it will still continue to work. It's one of those interesting things. The library is closed, but the fountain is very active. So
Who knew? And then the other thing, could you tell more about the glass or the skylights?
yeah, thanks for asking that. So these skylights exist now. And unless you're up on the third level of the existing stack area, which is where the teens are, you may not know it. But we are not putting in any new skylights. These are all there. These clear story windows are there. So it's just one of these things that when we take out all the stuff that's concealing them from view, we suddenly get to see them. And we think the quality of light will be great. They're north facing. They're a little sloped, so they're not perfect, but they're pretty darn good. North facing light is a really good quality of light. And we think it's going to be really great. And we hope you do too. So, yes.
Hi, so the last meeting, you said that the current estimate was $200 million.
195.
And then I heard you mentioning today cost overruns.
No.
And I read that the fees for architects are usually like 20 to 30% of whatever the total bill is.
No. No, I wish. As an architect, I would love that client.
So I have a bad feeling that a lot of these are just, are running up the bill because these are not problems that we have. We just need the earthquake retrofit. And this reimagining 4 levels and taking out the basement, that's something that should be planned over 20 years, not as a sort of creating a sense of urgency that it needs to be done. That should be planned over 20 years. All we just need is the earthquake retrofit, which shouldn't, like for instance, the California Historic Building Earthquake webpage says that the minimum amount of change should be done to a historic building to account for future advances in technology advances. And so this feels like you're fixing problems that we don't have. We just need it to be reopened with earthquake retrofit. We don't need all these things that you're trying to. This picture right here. We don't need that.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for your input.
By the way, I know you were mentioning Caltech a lot. I'm a retired Caltech scientist. I've mentioned this to all my other Caltech retired scientist friends, and none of them like this idea. So I know you're bandying Caltech about, but the Caltech people I know don't like it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for your input. I will address a few of those. There are some Caltech people who do like it. I certainly wasn't meaning to overgeneralize the input we've gotten. When I was mentioning cost overruns, I was saying we need to make sure we do not have them. So I do not want you to get the wrong impression of that. We certainly are maintaining our budget. Everything we see is maintaining our budget. The budget is $195. And that is a project budget that includes soft costs. I am not aware of any architect who can get a 20 to 30% fee. I would love it, but that's not what it is. It's substantially lower than that. The thing that's about 30% of hard costs are soft costs. And soft costs include permit costs, inspection costs, FF&E, which is the furniture and the furnishings and the monitors and things of that nature that go through the building. So there's a lot of things that go into soft costs. It's definitely not our fees, not only our fees. Yes.
Hi, my name is Bridget Fennell. I am a librarian. I actually did my internship at Pasadena Public Library, so this is a very special place for me.
Great.
I was at Glendale Public Library, and you did a great job on brand, and I was there for the Central Library renovation. So I feel very confident about this. I think you've done a great presentation, and this really is an opportunity to get it right. A lot of technological updates, and I'm glad you're talking about accessibility. I recently was a peer reviewer on the ALA grant for accessibility, and one of the things I learned there, some libraries were putting in continence stations so that adults and teens who wear diapers and have caregivers can access the library for the first time. So I'd encourage you to look at the clearance and installing some of them in there. And also, one area of concern I have is signage and directional aids, and that frequently is overlooked, and that's a big accessibility issue for people who are neurodivergent or physical and functional issues. And last, we have two more things, so I'll be quick.
It's all right. Devin's writing copious notes, so not an issue.
Yeah. I also would request, if you haven't done so, talk to stakeholders in the disability community here and get their input. Because what the code says is the bare minimum, and the user experience is quite different. The last thing I want to talk about, I'm so glad that you're talking about natural native plants and biodiversity. I had some concerns with all that lighting, all that uplighting. I'm concerned about bird strikes and light pollution. Poor Flacco in New York City.
Yes.
And I think the city of Pasadena needs to do better in general. So consider that. This is something that's going to have lasting impact and has major environmental consequences. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent point. And relative to the accessibility, we do have an accessibility consultant on our team as well to help guide us to do the right thing. But thank you for those points. Devin's got good notes. Hello.
Deborah, hi. Thank you for what you're doing. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
I have heard that the south entrance, I think you've mentioned this before, that there may be a design, which you didn't mention tonight, which I was looking forward to possibly hearing more about, that there would be like 2 outdoor rooms besides the coffee facility. And I would just like to say that being that the YWCA building that is in the Civic Center is being redesigned, the current design for that is to take away a lot of the landscaping and to outbuild the building to almost the curb of that parameter. So I think that your idea for these outdoor rooms could really serve the public in so many different ways and could be utilized in so many different ways with a coffee. And so I hope you'll share more information about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's probably an oversight that we should have put a courtyard image in here. So I'm going to describe it with my tiny little plan. Oopsie, what happened there? With my tiny little plan here. So this is the courtyard. The way that Myron Hunt designed the courtyard is that this is a room over on the east, this is a room over on the west, and this is a room in the middle. So the middle was the entrance room that everyone walked through past the fountain, which is that blue thing right in the middle here. Sorry to be in front of your view there. And past the fountain, so you heard that beautiful water sound, and you walked through a portico. So as soon as you were in the courtyard and you hear the water sound, you're sort of in a transformed space, and that was very important. And we plan on honoring that and bringing that back to life. There are some challenges. So those 2 rooms on the side, one of them was for the adult reading room on the east. On the west was the children's reading room. They're at the level of the inside of the building, which are more or less a couple inches short, but more or less the inside of the building. The one down below is lower, and you need to go up steps to get there. So there are some accessibility challenges in the courtyard. We're figuring them out so that we can make sure that the courtyard, all 3 of those rooms can be well used. And we are doing one thing that we hope Myron will not criticize us too much for. Our historic consultant has blessed this as being an acceptable thing to do, but we're connecting them so that you can go from one room to the other in a more fluid manner. Because the reality is they haven't been used as the strict reading rooms that they were for a long time. They used to be fenced off, so you couldn't go from one to the other. It's just not the way that people are using that space, but it will still be used for an outdoor reading space. And but it also will have greater flexibility than that. So sorry for a long-winded answer to a question. Let me get to this woman, and then you'll be next. Yes.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I wanted to see if anybody had considered having solar panels in the parking lot.
Yes, we don't have the budget for them.
What about water and power? You can't persuade them?
We continue to talk about all the clever ways we can get someone else to put solar panels in the parking lot. We think it would be ideal. It is a budget consideration, but we're trying to make sure to not preclude them being in. So we are looking at them as something that can be done in the future, but we just can't afford to do them right now for various, maybe obvious reasons.
Thank you.
Thank you for pointing out another thing we didn't mention. So yes, I'll let Tim talk about the donated books, but I will show you where the bookstore is. Come on, all the way back. Sorry, guys. There we go. All right, so right now the bookstore is over here. We're putting it on the opposite side. So it's going to have a nice picture window. When you come in the north entry, you'll be able to see the bookstore. And the other side of it is where the elevator is. So it'll have a nice prominent space, but it'll also have a separate space. So, and then in terms of dropping off.
Thanks. And I'll mention for anybody that isn't aware of it, the bookstore is a used bookstore that's donated books that are sold and then support library programming. So we're really grateful for those donations that come in from the public. Where exactly will the donation bin be? Don't know yet, but it will be. There will be book drops outside where 24 hours a day you could make a donation. And I'll say that ramp that Deborah showed in the entrance to the north entrance will be immediately adjacent to the bookstore. So, yeah, I think we'll know exactly where those book drops are placed. You got to make it easy, right? Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. Hold off until we get the ramp built, and then it'll be easier. Yes, ma'am.
Does funding depend on a bond issue in the November election?
I am going to let my client answer that question.
Thanks. Short answer is City Council will help us make the decision on funding for construction. This design phase is fully funded through grants from the state of California. So this part of the project, the design of the project, is not costing Pasadena residents anything, but the construction phase is unfunded. We need to come up with the money to get this project done. So city staff is pursuing all of the revenue streams that we can. We're going after grants at the state and national level. We're looking for money for accessibility projects, energy conservation projects, things like that. If there is a gap that we need to fill, if we don't raise enough to fully fund the construction, then we are going to present to council the option of a bond measure. And this timeline would allow City Council to consider a bond measure for this November 2024 election. We plan on going to City Council with a funding strategy presentation and within the next month and a half or so. The date has not been scheduled yet. It's looking like it will be early May is what I tentatively say. Fortunately, I don't have a date to share with you soon, but that's the answer. The funding has not been identified yet, but a potential bond measure is under consideration, and City Council would make the determination on that. And I'm sorry, I don't want to make an assumption. I'm thinking that you're saying that the library serves everyone regardless of their housing status. Okay, thanks. So yes, I firmly believe that. The library is for every person that walks through the door. It provides free, open access to everyone. It's a vital part of our social infrastructure that everyone has the right to information and participate civically in the events that happen in the library. So I'm very proud of the work that the city does, and in particular my department, in connecting people with resources to permanent housing. Before the library closed, we had a relationship with the public health department where 5 days a week, a social worker from this public health department staff was on site at Central Library. Someone that was very good at breaking the ice, seeing how people were doing. If they were open to it, sitting down with them and identifying what are your needs, and helping people connect to resources to meet their basic needs and hopefully help them navigate the process of finding permanent housing, which can be difficult. So that will be part of the reopened Central Library. There is an office planned for a social worker to be on site to connect people to those types of resources. And that's my first thing that comes to mind. I'm happy to talk with you after this meeting if you have other ideas, but it's something that we're committed to being part of the solution. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, the library is a safe place for everyone, and we want to continue that. Thanks for that. Thanks for that question.
And just one thing I'll add to that as well, as the furniture selections that we make will be things that keep in mind how to keep things clean, how to avoid having, lots of seams and cushions so that things can't get lost or placed. And so there's some mindfulness we can have that will also help keep the library being appropriate and in good shape for everyone to use. Yes.
Hi. I've lived in Pasadena for 7 years. I moved from the East Coast, and I've been to the library, the main library. It's the easiest one for me to get to. It's been great. I want to know, is there going to be enough bicycle parking?
Yes, another thing. You guys are really good at telling me all the things I forgot to point out.
And enough handicap parking.
So we are in the handicap parking is an increase from what is there now, and it is the amount that we're required to have. We will take comments from the public about whether it's enough. Okay. And in terms of the bicycle parking, see if I can. Oh, yeah, all right.
And the other thing
I'm sorry, I wasn't quite understanding. So it's in the front of the building, on the west side, which is interestingly, historically, where it was.
Okay.
So that's the wrong side. It's not going to show, of course. So it's down here. And there's a nice area for bicycle parking. Okay. And it was there. And
the other thing
there we go. All right. Oops.
The other thing was EV parking.
Yeah. All right. So here's your bicycles just before I go off.
With EV parking is people park there and just charge their vehicles. And they don't come and go. Yeah,
I think I've had a running commentary with Tim about the fact that he really should charge for the charging because otherwise people just charge their car all day.
That means that if the lot's kind of full, you can't park there.
Yeah, I understand. That's more of a discussion for the library and Public Works to come to. Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks. We don't know exactly how many there will be, but we will have some EV charging spots in the library for sure. They will be occupied, and they will be some type of regulation and enforcement for how long you can be there. Exactly what it will be or whether there's a cost to it, we don't know yet, but you're absolutely right. We need to address that. Thanks for bringing that up.
Hi, I have a sort of a broad point question and then a sort of more specific one. And one of the things that's always been grand about the south entry and a couple other spaces in the library has been there has been display cases. And they have served as points of public history. Mm-hmm. So we would have a variety of communities, affiliations, affinity groups that would have a chance to have things up there. And it was really important because we would see cross communities. It was an opportunities to share where people would have similar experiences. And so I'm hoping that those three spaces in some way or the other are going to be able to be connected.
Yeah, thank you very much for that comment, and we will make sure not to forget about them. We have not located them quite yet, but we haven't forgotten about them, but I appreciate you reminding us not to forget.
The second is signage and thinking about not only some of the issues that have been brought up, but also different languages. One of the things that's always been a part of Pasadena's history has been our multilingual treasures that we have. And so if we can incorporate that, which brings people in and again helps with cross-cultural kinds of interactions. And then a very specific thing is if you're going to have green rooms off of the stage, considerations for whether you want to have a screen or some kind of an auditory, some sort of a speaker, so that people who are in the green rooms know what's going on stage, and that lessens your need for stage managers.
Yes, another fine point, and thank you for those comments. Appreciate them.
Hi, I grew up in Pasadena, and I grew up in that library and actually this library too. So to me, it's great to see what you guys are doing with the library. I think those changes are very needed. I also want to get to know a little bit more information about the children's area. Now, as a mom of two, I take my kids to story time and playtime. We're actually in San Rafael today, so it's really important for me to have those areas because that's where I fell in love with books. So I want to make sure that you guys don't forget about that. Also, if there's any possibility of like a family bathroom or a lactation room, super important. It's really hard to carry two kids into one stall. So a family room is super important. But yeah, I love what you guys are doing. So thank you.
So the answer to your question is we do have a lactation room. And a family room. And so the children's area is here. The reason it's not highlighted is that we are very conscious of people wanting it to remain as it is. And so it will have, new flooring. The flooring is carpeting, and I am correct, right? Yeah, it's carpet right now. Sorry, just fact check here. So it'll have, new carpeting, but it will be taken, have the seismic improvements made, and then the finishes put back. The fireplace will be preserved. We're very conscious of the things that make that space so special. And we've heard so many people say, I was a kid there, I took my grandkids there, or you name it. And we know how beloved it is. That said, the story area, the story room, currently has a bunch of risers that are not functioning terribly well, so we're going to redo that space, and but that's also not a historic space. But we do plan on improving the story room area by removing the risers.
Yeah, and I just wanted to talk because we have been working with the library group. Sorry, we've been working with the library group pretty extensively behind the scenes about what needs they have. We haven't heard actually much from the community specifically on that, but we can do a lot of things in the children's hall with furniture. So different furniture, different setups, different locations of things. That's kind of been some of our focus. So it's not kind of really something that we're showing here, but that's great to note, and we're glad there is interest. And we have been working on the lactation room and the specific restrooms for that area. Thank you. We have what we do have in the courtyard. We now have a ramp, so we know that stroller parking is an issue. We haven't designed anything inside the building. We've been looking at more access for strollers into the building, but not necessarily parking anywhere. So it's still planned for outside or in one of the courtyard areas.
Hi, my name is Lon Bender. I serve on the Commission for Urban Forestry and Parks and Recreation as well. And we have a fiduciary duty, I think, to our constituents to look to native planting. And you mentioned a park area, native habitat and native plantings. We're trying to not bring in species that are far afield. And it's a great opportunity to show off the native habitat in terms of the species that we use for public spaces like this. We're in talks with Norton Simon. They're working on their project as well and trying to get them also to use, create a native habitat. And it's an opportunity for kids that are coming to the library, and they're going to have like the kids space you're saying, but also the outside experience. You showed kids outside. And if it's essentially going to be a park, so it's a great opportunity to give them education about native habitat and species, and animals that will come to those trees and plants and shrubs. So we have great experts here in town, and we get to interact with UFAC and potentially Parks and Rec and some of the staff, and to make that happen.
And
So-
we would love to partner with you
We're
on
in
that.
it. We're into it.
Yeah.
We all
So-
really care
so-
a lot about. And then I have one small point. In a number of the images you were showing slide, which I love what you're doing, by the way. I've been following this from the beginning in April of the first year. But you're showing, I'm thinking about color. You showed very white colors in a lot of places. And I think it's important that a library be a cozy place where people feel like they're in a place that's safe and they can like let their guard down and then just read and study and all. So some of the light things that you had against the brown in large open spaces, and even in that one meeting room, it'd be nice to go with more of the softer creams and colors like that. So I don't know what your paint plan is or your color plan overall, but I encourage that because it has to do with how your experience is when you're in a space like that. So thank you very much.
A great comment. I will just say our client has kind of made that comment to us too. And we are certainly not ignoring our client. We just haven't quite gotten there yet. But noted, and we all agree. The next time, we just haven't worked on the color palette yet. But the next time you see it, we probably will. But going back to the native planting, our landscape architects are very focused on native planting and appropriate, resiliency and education. So we are seeing that as an education opportunity. But would love to get your contact info and get together. That would be great input.
Hello, my name is Avram Gold, and this is my first meeting, so I don't know if this topic has been brought up. And I was hoping somebody would mention this before I had to. It's a very sensitive and alarming topic, but times are changing, and we have to think about safety. And if anybody watches the news, we no longer can depend on a public area being safe from anything that might happen. So as architects and designers, and you're starting from the ground up, I'm wondering if you're building in surveillance systems, video surveillance systems, means of quick dispatches to police departments, and beyond that, if a fire were to start, is the technology there to be able to put fires out without using water and sprinkler systems?
There were a bunch of things in there, so I'll take some and then have Teo Sierra address some of the others. But so as I started saying, this building started from this renovation project started because of a desire to improve the fire alarm system and the sprinklers, providing them throughout the building, which is not the case. Currently. We are very much interested in fire suppression and appropriate means. It is a water-based fire suppression system, but we also have, great detection throughout the building. I'm not exactly sure what I can commit to beyond that, but we do have a very smart and capable fire protection consultant working with us as well.
Okay.
And we'll certainly discuss with him alternatives to the water-based system. I won't promise that will be something that can happen, but
I was just
but it's
curious.
worth thinking about.
I just don't know what's going on in that field, so I was just wondering if there are alternatives because books get wet. you know.
So the one thing that we do know from working with him is that the quickest detection and quickest response will do the least amount of damage, and so really looking at how to do that properly. In terms of the rest of it, I'm going to let Teo jump in here because he's chomping at the bit.
Okay.
Good evening, Senior Project Manager Teo Sierra. I am with Public Works, so I am actually currently managing the design and the construction of this project. So that is a very good question in terms of security because for the past 3 weeks, we've actually addressing some of those concerns. We have actually scheduled meetings, not just with our library staff, but we also now involving PD. So in the next couple of weeks, we are scheduling meetings to kind of go over an overview of what is going to be required in terms of the cameras and how the system is going to work. The type of views that we're going to put in, the cameras that we're going to go, the type of system that is going to be recording. And so all that stuff is going to be vetted in the next 2 to 3 weeks. We are actually using as well the consultants that the Gruen has as well, in order to provide the support system that is required, because there's a lot of equipment that is required to have cameras. It's not just the camera that is just taping. Sure. There's a lot of information that actually is being captured through that. So stand by. I would say in the next month or so, we will have more information in terms of how the system is going to integrate with PD. So
It's comforting to know that you're addressing all
Yes.
of this and looking forward.
We are.
It's a sensitive topic, and
yes.
and nobody wants to talk about it, but we have to.
Yeah, so if you address the same question with Pasadena Police, they will probably tell you the same thing, that we are in the works, because this is a subject that, that has come up in the past for parks and for other entities. So I think this is, something that we're moving forward pretty quickly as well.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah.
It's a great question. Thanks. There's two more cents on that. As I want to say, it really was the genesis of this project. It was making the building more safe. So that's every step of the way we're addressing those questions. And we talked about camera surveillance and fire suppression. We didn't talk too much about egress, but that's a big part of it too, making sure that wherever you are in the library, you're not cornered, that there's a way out. And so Deborah's heard me make that comment a lot, like how are we addressing the safest way out of the building? So those conversations are happening. Thanks, yeah.
Hi. And for the architects in the room, 2 ways out of all the rooms that need it. Or more.
Hi, I just wanted to check. There's the children's room on this side, and there's the entrance, and then there's an adult room area. The lighting in there is really beautiful. And are you going to keep that lighting in there? Just the setup the way it was?
Yeah,
it's very calming.
I think the answer is yes. I just want to make sure I truly understand what you're talking about. No, I think you're talking about in the humanities hall.
Yeah, because you walk in the doors, and
Sorry, everyone, that I'm flipping back and forth so much.
It was just very, I don't know, the ambiance in there is just very nice to read and
I think you're talking about this room right
here. Yes,
yeah.
I am.
Yeah.
It's going to stay the same?
Yes,
oh,
yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hi, I love everything you've presented in terms of actual building and the use and reimagining or taking it back to some of the basic design. So forgive this terrible question. Parking, guys. I mean, are you working, and this may be more for Tim, but are you working with the city? Is there any give on the parking? Because this is going to be an even greater draw. And frankly, before the closure, before the pandemic, Tim, people had to trot inside and get a parking pass, go back out to the parking lot to put that on their dashboard to park for 2 hours. And, what we had then was not adequate. As much as we'd like people to use bikes, a lot of us don't. And hey, can the city step forward in some way to accommodate the need for better municipal parking in that area, if not digging under the ground?
Right.
I mean, it's crazy.
Loud and clear. Thank you, Katie. Yeah. And Deborah can tell you one of the first things I asked for is, well, where's the subterranean parking garage? Right? Because that's what we need, right? It's expensive, is the short answer. But we will try to address it as best we can. I love the improvements to the flow in the parking lot that are being proposed. It will stop people from taking 2 spots instead of 1, and like happens so often. Say we're looking at different options. Specifically, immediately to the north of Central Library, there's that, I think, 8-story building that used to be the University of Phoenix. Their garage has some city-owned spaces in it that we could leverage potentially. Other things too we're looking at, but yeah, you're right. It's having a net number of parking spaces doesn't move us ahead, right? Yeah, but I hear you. Thanks. For those that didn't hear, there's a 1-story building to the east of the Central Library that has a big for lease sign on it and has since I've lived in California. Yeah. Our city real estate manager has reached out to the owner of that property on multiple occasions, and the price is out of range right now for the city, but we'll keep returning to that. It may be a solution in the future, but to date it hasn't been. It's just been too expensive.
Other questions? I'm mindful of the hour and really appreciate, your attention and all of the feedback that we've gotten. It's really been fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you again all for being here. Before you leave tonight, if you'd like a card that'll take you to the project website for updates, please come see us and we'll offer you one. The materials for tonight's meeting will be posted at this website if you'd like to see them again, to review them at your own pace and share them with others. And we're hoping that our friends at KPAS will send us a link to the video for tonight's presentation too to share. So thank you all for being here.